Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. Joining me now, Midwest traveler Chris Biderman.
Man, it's good to be home.
Have you back, man.
It is good to be home. It's been a long week. There was a Kings road trip, some time in Texas, some time in New Orleans, went up to Santa Rosa last night for some holiday stuff, which was great. But man, it's nice to just be back in the office, back in the lab,
grinding,
back grinding on a Sunday night here. Apologies to everybody who may or may not have been expecting a podcast Thursday night after the Seahawks game. That was just not happening for me. And we wanted everyone to enjoy their holiday in peace and not getting yammered at by us. So
yeah, and frankly, I'm just gonna keep it a stack because we owe that to our listeners. I was gonna do a little solo pod, but I wasn't feeling very good. I just wasn't feeling well. We hosted Thanksgiving this year. I wasn't feeling awesome, and then I had a couple of glasses of wine and was like, nah, I got no shot at doing this today. And so rather than doing a bad podcast, we're like, you know what? It's the holidays. People understand. Well, we'll get some out to them on Monday. So here we are. Before we dive into, we're going to talk a little bit about the 49ers win over the Seahawks, and then we'll begin what's going to be a week-long look ahead at this NFC Championship rematch against the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we do all of that, let's talk about our friends over at Lamb Chops. That new collection just dropped at sglambchops.com. There's a new t-shirt. It's sick. There's a new hoodie. It's flames. There's new joggers, the sweat joggers, super fire. And a Letterman jacket, like the leather sleeves.
Yeah,
and
it's nice.
Got the crossed cleaver logos on the back. It's unbelievable. Go check it out at sglambchops.com. There's photos of it at their Instagram at sglambchops. And while you're there, use promo code Candlestick20 for 20% off your order. That's not a Black Friday thing either. That's any day of the week. You can fire that off, Candlestick20, and get 20% off your order just in time for the holidays. So you're welcome from Candlestick Chronicles.
Absolutely.
And Lamb Chops.
Absolutely. As you know, Kyle, the most important thing when it comes to buying clothes is looking dope.
It is the most important thing, and you will look dope in your lamb chops. sglambchops.com, promo code Candlestick20. Join the herd today. We're also sponsored by Cooperage Brewing. You can visit the brewery up there in Santa Rosa in the North Bay. Great vibes at the brewery. And Candlestick Chronicles Hazy IPA just in the rotation now. Love to see it. Really fire.
Yeah, I was actually up there Saturday night and learned that what's happened in the past is they've done runs and then they've kind of run out and then they've done another run and there's been like a gap between their runs of Candlestick Chronicles. They've just had multiple and kept it going. Like it's so popular right now in Santa Rosa and where they sell it in cans throughout the Bay Area that they just have it continuously, and there may or may not be another run fermenting in the back of the brewery there. So this is 3 years in a row, Candlestick Chronicles, just a staple of Cooperage's lineup. They got a little bit of everything. We had a sour there Saturday night. That was amazing. Obviously, they have Cultivating Mass, the award-winning stout. And Candlestick Chronicles. I also had a Keg Slayer, like their signature IPA, which is also amazing. So yeah, go to cooperagebrewing.com, order yourself some. You can get it shipped directly to your door anywhere within California. Obviously you have to be 21 or older, or just go up to Santa Rosa and enjoy the vibes and the food trucks and everything like that. It's a great spot.
cooperagebrewing.com. Get your beer today. All right. Let's talk about this Seahawks game and then begin our 49ers-Eagles little preview here. Here we go. Before we get started, Bryce in our YouTube chat wants to know what my take is on CM Punk returning at Survivor Series. And I got to tell you, with the way he left AEW, I'm out on Punk ever doing anything in wrestling again. Am I right? Who's with me? I think those are words that I just said. I don't know. Chris, I'm so happy you're back and staying hydrated.
Yeah, the last wrestling I watched was probably like 6th grade WCW. My friends and I would pool our allowances together and order the $20 pay-per-views when it was like Goldberg, when he was at the peak of his powers, and
This explains a lot
we were
about you.
big NWO Wolfpack kids back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. Circa, let's see, this probably would have been 1998, off the top of my head. So, we'll that's the extent of my wrestling knowledge. I heard The Rock's famous, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, George Kittle's big Steve Austin guy.
Yeah. Way to bring
That's
it back to the 49ers. I'm really
full
proud of you
circle,
for that.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a bit. I was gonna say something about wrestling, and now I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Okay, moving on. We're 5 minutes into this podcast. We haven't gotten to Niners Seahawks. So the 49ers beat the hell out of the Seahawks on Thanksgiving. And honestly, just one of those games that, yeah, the wheels came off a little bit there in the third quarter. I think the Seahawks outscored the Niners 10-0. But the 49ers are just so much better than Seattle that even the weird Pete Carroll Lumen Field aura doesn't exist anymore. Like, the Niners are just they are that much better than Seattle. The gap is that wide.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that, going back to last year. The Niners, of course, beat them 3 times last year, and then their first meeting this year, but pretty handily. It just feels like as long as Geno Smith's the quarterback and the 49ers defense is what it is, like that gap is going to remain as far as it is right now. Like it just feels like as long as like the big differentiator between the Niners and Seahawks all those years was always Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson at the peak of his powers was always the thorn in the 49ers side.
That's it.
Their inability to sack him and his ability to scramble and pull plays out of his behind and find Tyler Lockett for some ridiculous touchdowns. Like that was always sort of the underlying thing you had to watch for when it came to 49ers Seahawks. And Thursday night, it was the Niners defense, which is playing at a super elite level and maybe the best defense in the league at this very moment. Against Geno Smith coming off a really rough throwing arm injury on a short week, having not practiced. And that was about as expected, right? Like that's sort of what you expected. But one thing I didn't really expect that was really impressive to me was Travarius Ward.
Yes.
And just the number of plays he made, the pass breakups. He had, how many did they credit him for officially?
I think 2.
They credit him for 3, according to.
There was the one over the middle he should have intercepted.
Yeah.
There was another one, the deep ball that he tipped away, and I can't think of the third one.
Yeah, but just like that was. I mean, I feel comfortable saying that was probably the best game he's had in his 49ers tenure. Would you agree with that?
It's right up there with the game last year in Seattle when he shadowed DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was an interesting aspect too. Like the 49ers since 2017 have not typically had their cornerbacks shadow receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a little bit new with Ward and DK Metcalf specifically. And it might be that Metcalf is just such a difficult matchup for somebody like Diamador Lenore that they're just like, we want the bigger physical Ward against this guy. And I think Charvarius Ward is really good, and I'm sure the numbers back this up. But in terms of like go balls and defending the go ball, for a guy who's not like considered a super fast corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy we think about as more of like a physical long corner. He's really good against the deep ball, and he just matches up really well against DK Metcalf. And if you eliminate the DK Metcalf deep ball out of Seattle's offense, you're going a long way to neutralizing what they have. Because Tyler Lockett. Go ahead.
Did you see what Pete Carroll said after the game?
No.
On his radio hit with our guy Mike Salk, friend of the program.
Mm-hmm.
He more or less said that they thought that they could take advantage of the Niners corners deep because the Niners corners commit a lot of penalties. And so that was
ironic.
That was their game plan, was to just fire go balls and hope for penalties or completions. And there was one penalty on the 49ers secondary all night, and it was on Tayshaun Gibson, who got called for a hold on a play where the Seahawks also got flagged, so it got offset.
Yeah.
Shout out Migos.
Yeah, like they I don't Charvarius Ward was just really good, and you didn't really see anything from Jair Brown that made you think like, oh, that this could be a problem. Now you did lose Odom to an injury, and now you're down two safeties,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's something to monitor long term, but I don't really know how we talk about that right now. But I just thought like I thought the 49ers would win handily.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was more impressive than I thought it would be going in. Like I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was more lopsided than it would be going in. And for I mean, this is going into this week, which we'll talk about later on. You feel different about this game going into Philadelphia than maybe some of the other games, particularly from a rest perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
now you're playing the Eagles, who just played an overtime game and had their defense on the field for 91 snaps. And the Niners actually have a
Jeez.
rest advantage because they have the extra 3 days after playing on Thursday. Whereas, we talked about it coming into the season. The Niners were one of, if not the most disadvantaged teams when it came to rest in the NFL. And, the Browns game, the Browns were off a bye. The 49ers obviously weren't. The Bengals game, the Bengals were off a bye. That, I think, factored in both of those games, not making excuses for the Niners. Um, and even coming off the bye, of course, the Niners had the Jaguars, who were also coming off a bye, so they didn't really get a rest advantage in that game. This is the first big game of the year that the 49ers have a really distinct rest advantage. So it's not to say it's going to be easy by any means going to Philadelphia and playing arguably the best team in the NFL right now. The
Mm-hmm.
Niners open as favorites, which is certainly an interesting wrinkle, which we can talk about throughout this week.
It's wild.
But coming out of the Seattle game, we haven't even talked about Brock Purdy at all yet, but you feel pretty good about where the 49ers are at. Like even after the 3-game losing streak, it's been 3 games since that losing streak, and now you
Mm-hmm.
feel like, okay, this is far more like the team that was 5-0 to start the season than the team that
Yeah.
lost to Cleveland, Minnesota, and Cincinnati.
Yeah. They gave up one touchdown in Seattle, and it was a pick six on a tipped ball. That was weird. That was a weird 2 plays from Brock. He was really good. 21 of 30, 209 yards, a touchdown, a pick. But he was playing really well. And then they had those 2 snaps from the 4 or whatever it was, and he just misfired to Debo on
Mm-hmm.
just a short crosser, like a route he hits every time.
It
Just ran
looked
high
like
and
that
behind him.
one. It looked like that one might have got tipped too. Like it looked like back-to-back passes got tipped.
Yeah, just a really strange confluence of events in those 2 plays, and then he was fine the rest of that game. It was really strange, but yeah, it's just kind of a dominant top to bottom performance. Like Christian McCaffrey, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. Purdy was really good. Big Debo game in Seattle. Rinse repeat there. 7 catches for 79 yards. Uh, George Kittle did not play. It's tough.
Niners has kept George Kittle inactive.
Yeah, but no, the player I really want to circle though, you mentioned Charvarius Ward. Ambry Thomas was excellent again the other day. And I have the numbers here, and naturally I closed out of them when I went to go click them because I lead the league in that. But so since he came in to the starting lineup against the Jags after the bye, he's given up 7 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown on 12 targets, and he's grabbed an interception. That's a 59.7 passer rating allowed. And I don't know if it's Chase Young has meant that much to the defense that it's helped a guy like Ambry Thomas play like an elite corner, or if Ambry Thomas is playing that well and it has helped the Niners pass rush, because Chase Young didn't have a sack the other night, but the entire Niners defensive line otherwise 8. And maybe that's just Seattle being bad up front, but I have a hard time completely discounting what Ambry Thomas has done as a starting outside corner. And I have a hard time looking at his production and not saying like, oh, this has helped. Like this has been helpful
Yeah.
for the 49ers, and not just the addition of Chase Young being the spark for this turnaround. Like it's having another corner who's playing at a really, really high level on the outside.
I think, like we can quote you when we're talking about that, like "Por qué no los dos," right? Like
Yeah. No, great
it's
question.
Ambry Thomas
Great
playing
call.
well, and it's a pass rush playing well,
Yeah.
in combination. Yeah, I think it's huge because one thing that was happening earlier in the season, even during the 5-0 start to the year, was like there were questions about Isaiah Oliver,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like how comfortable you feel with this guy, particularly against smaller, faster receivers, and his ability to, cover the deep ball. That was an issue for the 49ers. And now moving Diamador Lenore to the inside, the 49ers didn't have any issues with Lenore really the last
Yeah.
few weeks. Like he's been really solid on the inside, and that's been a really nice development for them. And when you just talk about talent, I know Isaiah Oliver is a former second round pick, but like the 49ers were really high on Thomas. And,
Yeah.
when they drafted him a couple years ago in the third round, they thought they were getting a steal and that he would have been taken earlier if not for his weird college career where he'd spent some time in the hospital and all that. Right. Like, and so I just think like this is far closer to what the 49ers thought they were getting from Ambry Thomas when they drafted him than what happened last year when he basically, came in after a promising rookie season and didn't have a great offseason, wasn't in particularly good shape, and then just got outplayed by basically everybody in the cornerback room. This year, it seems like he's taken that a little bit personally,
Yeah.
and he's embraced the opportunity that he's gotten. And
Yeah.
that's a different development for them, and obviously a helpful one because coming into the year, you didn't feel all that great about the Niners' depth at cornerback, but with Ambry Thomas playing at a reasonably high level, now you're starting to be like, okay, maybe this group overall is a little bit better than we thought. And maybe
Yeah.
in addition to that, like Diamador Lenore is more versatile than we thought because we
It,
weren't sure about him on the outside and we certainly weren't sure about him on the inside. And he's playing well at both spots when the 49ers need him to. So
it's even more impressive for me that Thomas started the year like kind of sharing duties with Isaiah Oliver and then got taken out of the rotation entirely. To jump back in and play well, that's really impressive because I figured he was done after he got benched that second time.
yeah.
It's just like, oh, he's not gonna make it, and now he's a key cog in a defense is playing at a really high level. Um, One more thing from this game for me, that touchdown throw to Brandon Ayuk was so sick. I've watched it a million times. I think I thought the George Kittle throw against the Jags was the best throw of Purdy's career. I think this one might be better.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those big boy throws where it's you have to throw it on time. Like the Kittle one was difficult because the pocket was collapsing on him. He
Right.
didn't really have room to step up and he just kind of hucked it. But there wasn't really a timing element to it. It was just like it was a deep ball. Like you don't
Right. Just get it out in
this
front.
one, he starts out left, he's getting pressure from his right, and then he first of all throws it in between four defenders, right on target, perfect spiral, and it's the game sealing play pretty much. It just felt like one of those throws that could have even more, like as good as it was, and it was in the air for what 30 yards or whatever,
Mhm.
and it was on a line. Like Brock Purdy's obviously not known for his arm strength, but it was on a line. It's one of those throws that might be more symbolic or might have like more symbolic value like down the road. Like if Brock Purdy makes that throw in Philadelphia
Yeah.
or a similar throw in Philadelphia, there's a chance that he's like, yeah, like after doing that, making that throw last week in Seattle, my level of confidence was a little bit different, right? Like they're like, and this I'm not trying to equate these throws, but there's when Jimmy Garoppolo overthrew Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl, that throw had like massive ripple effects, right? Like not only did the 49ers lose the game, but it sort of not changed the way, but like really impacted the way we all felt about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mhm.
Like, man, that was his one opportunity to like really like win a Super Bowl. And it never really felt like throughout Jimmy Garoppolo's time as a 49ers starter, he had those throws where it's like fourth quarter of a game, downfield, into traffic, on time and accurate, like a game-winning throw. Like Jimmy Garoppolo, you never felt confident that Jimmy Garoppolo would make that like game-winning big time throw in a big moment. And I know the game was sort of out of hand and it was lopsided throughout, but I think what Brock Purdy's throw can do is like alter perception that like, okay, this is a guy who could make you a big throw in a big moment. Where and given how things have gone with the 49ers at the quarterback position since 2017, like that's a pretty unique feeling, right? Like we know Brock Purdy's good. We know the numbers are what they are, but like the 49ers haven't had quarterbacks just go make those types of game defining throws very often. And now you get a guy Thanksgiving on the road in a tough environment. Seahawks aren't very good, but like still a tough spot to make that throw. And everything about it was perfect, more or less. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a big
we
time play.
Yeah, I go back to the Rams home game in 2019 where Garoppolo had the back-to-back 3rd and 16 conversions. And the one was just a bullet over the middle to Kendrick Bourne, and then the other one was to Emmanuel Sanders on a blown coverage. But to your point, the throw to Ayuk was right where it needed to be for not only him to catch it, but then to carry him into the end zone. The throw that Garoppolo made to Emmanuel Sanders should have been a touchdown, but he like way underthrew it. And Sanders had to like go back and get it, and then he falls and he gets touched, and it's a game-winning field goal instead of a game-winning touchdown. The long touchdown to, I think it was Emmanuel Sanders again in New Orleans in 2019. He literally had to backpedal to catch it because it was underthrown. And then he falls down and then gets up and goes. So
yeah, that's a good point.
So like those throws have been there, but never A, with this consistency, and B, never in a spot that allows a receiver to continue making a play. And that was the biggest thing to me, is not only did he get it over the two defenders in front, but then to get it enough out in front of Ayuk that he could get between those two defenders into the end zone. Like that was just an unbelievable play, and it slammed the door. Like that was it. The game was probably over before that, but that was night. Like there was no chance after that. And like, was it his best game as a pro? Like not by a long shot. And were there some misses in that game? Like absolutely. But it's those kind of throws that when somebody says like, oh, Brock Purdy doesn't do anything, like he very clearly does. And if he only makes 2 of those throws a game where he's doing something and they're in those spots, like I will take that 100 times out of 100 over whatever the fuck Justin Herbert's doing in LA.
Yeah.
Or whatever Josh Allen's doing in Buffalo.
Yeah. I mean, so what's kind of funny about the Brock Purdy conversation too is like he's playing at a higher level than
Sorry,
Jimmy
excuse
Garoppolo.
my language. I don't know why the F-bomb just slipped out.
That you're passionate. I respect it. It's funny, like the Jimmy Garoppolo conversation, everyone there's a lot of people who say like, man, Jimmy Garoppolo got a lot of hate for how much he won. Or given how much he won. And then it's like Brock Purdy's winning at a higher level. Like, do we not get that? Like Brock Purdy, like there was a 3-game losing streak, but there hasn't been like the continuous like terrible throw in that Thursday night game against Tennessee a couple years ago.
Oh,
right. That nearly cost the 49ers in a pretty big way when you have Kyle Juszczyk wide open running a wheel route. Like you don't have those misses consistently. Like it felt the biggest difference for me between Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo is it felt like in many cases the 49ers were winning despite their quarterback play.
Yeah.
And a lot of time Jimmy Garoppolo was serviceable enough, but there were enough like really bad throws and really touch and go moments where you're like, man, the Niners are kind of on the razor's edge with their quarterback position right now.
They should
Brock Purdy is a reason why they're winning. They're not winning despite Brock Purdy. He is a reason why they're winning. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I totally agree with you. Here's the way I can put it. They should have blown more teams out in 2019.
Yeah.
and in 2021. They should not have been clawing for a playoff spot in week 18.
Or losing to Carson Wentz in a
Or,
rainstorm.
right. Like all these. So there's all these games you can point to that A, they shouldn't have lost, but B, where, okay, they went out and won, but I mean, like, remember the Chargers game last year? I think they beat the. I think they beat the Chargers like 22-17. But that was the Chargers defense was down a bunch of guys and they couldn't stop the run and they didn't have any receivers. That game, I think the Niners win by 3 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, 22-16.
22-16, thanks. It was just knock down, drag out, like scratch and claw and go get a win. And it's like, that's not how that game should go for a team that fancies itself a Super Bowl contender.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I think a Jimmy Garoppolo team probably beats this version of Seattle, but beats them like 23-17.
Yeah.
In it, like, okay, they won it, but like, or they get there's a stop at the 1-inch line.
Right.
Like at the end of, although that 2019 Seattle team was better than this one, but you get the point. So
yeah,
that's the biggest difference for me is like, does Brock still get plenty of help? Like for sure. Like I'm not trying to diminish what Kyle Shanahan does or what Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, all those guys, like Christian McCaffrey, obviously, he is in a great spot, but he's also doing things that go beyond just, the offense and the weapons.
Yeah.
And that's why that throw in particular was such a big deal to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, can we talk real quick about, did you have more on Purdy?
No, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about the Bills real quick. Are the Bills a bad good team or a good bad team? I think the Bills are a bad good team.
I think they're a bad good team. I think what Josh Allen did today, like obviously Josh Allen does some, like has some just maddening performances and just does some things where you're like, man, you should be way above that. But also like sometimes you just got to win with your high wire act. Like, right. Like Brett Favre, and I'm not saying Josh Allen's Brett Favre, but Brett Favre threw a shit ton of interceptions, but you lived with it because that's what Brett Favre was. Like he's just going to throw picks, but in order to have one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen, you need to just be able to live with those picks. The problem the Bills have run into is that they've had a lot of injuries on defense, particularly to their best guys. They lost their best corner and they lost their best linebacker. And Josh Allen has to wear this superhero cape on offense. They don't really have a running game. And when he's doing things like he did tonight, he looks like the best player in the NFL. But he can't really do it by himself. Like he needs an elite defense if they're going to like contend for championships. And that was pretty apparent in Philadelphia. And I don't think Sean McDermott did a really good job in overtime at all. You had defense. You had the defense running to the defense's left at the snap. And you saw Swift on the second to last play of the game. The play was designed to go to the offense's right where the defense was flowing. And then you just see him cut back and it's like, oh, it's a big run, like easy. And then you see the same exact thing on the next play. The defense is flowing to its left and Jalen Hurts is given a wide open lane right to the end zone down the left side. The offense is left. And so I think they're a really good coach away. I think the McDermott thing has probably run its course. Honestly, like
I think so too.
I think Allen's good enough. I think you just got to ride the roller coaster with him, and hope you can get better health defensively. But like, if you give them a more competent coach, I think they're right in the mix. Like they're as good as anybody. When it comes to Philadelphia, go ahead.
Just to put a pin in that point real quick before we jump to Philly, Jordan Mailata on Philly's offensive line. This is from James Palmer from NFL Media. Jordan Mailata said on the game-winning touchdown that he couldn't believe the Bills gave them that look. That play is a staple within their offense, and when they saw the safety move, they all knew Jalen would score. So that's what Sean McDermott's up to. Anyways, the Eagles.
Tough scene. The Eagles. Eagles are underdogs in this Niners game. at least when the first lines came out on Sunday night, as we're recording this.
Yeah,
I saw 1.5. The Niners are favored by 1.5.
Yeah, it's also same. I at first it was like, what? No way. But then you start to think about it, and it makes sense. The Niners are on 10 days rest, whereas Philly's coming off this super emotional overtime win. Where how many snaps did you say their defense played?
I think 91 or 92.
90 plus. 90
For
plus.
context, the Niners defense played 56 snaps on Thursday.
56.
Yeah.
And if you think that doesn't matter, like it absolutely does. The rest stuff, especially this time of year, especially when you're an Eagles team that's banged up. So there's that aspect of it. There's, I mean, just the rest itself. And then there's part of me that I think because of this and because of doing radio on ESPN 1320, Sacramento Sports Later, and and on and you know, writing and all this stuff, is I start to nitpick the 49ers a lot. Sometimes probably
Yes.
unfairly.
Yes, if the Niners ever give up like points in the first quarter, the group chat is blowing up with like, "Oh, this is over."
I'm just like, they suck
It's
now.
a wrap.
They should probably look into tanking. No, but it's like I get really like nitpicky, and like I said, probably unfairly so. And there's people listening that are like, yeah, fucking unfairly so, idiot. but they've been like, their ceiling has been higher than Philly's this year. That when they've been winning, they've been way more dominant. They had 3 weeks where they lost their minds, and now they're back to being dominant. Whereas Philly has some nice wins, like beating Buffalo, beating Kansas City, beating the Cowboys. Those are all really excellent wins. And end of the day, that's the goal. They're 10-1. They're the best team in the NFL right now. But when you're Vegas, or you're trying to put on your Vegas hat, and you're going, who's the better team here? Like, you can see why they would say it's the 49ers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the Niners top to bottom have more talent and are more balanced, right? I think the Eagles, particularly defensively, I think the Niners defensive line is a touch better, but not by like a wide margin. I think you could make the case that the Eagles defensive line is just as good. The Eagles offensive line is much better than the Niners offensive line, and I don't think that's a discussion.
Not even
and
close.
I think the Eagles offensive line is really, like, if they win the game, that's going to be why. They're going to be like, the tush push is going to work in key moments. They're going to convert some short yardage plays with the running game. And also, well, anyway, we're talking about who's better right now. I have some other thoughts, but when we're talking about who's better,
to do this week, dude.
I know. Like, defensively, the Niners linebackers are way better. Eagles corners are probably better, but the Niners safeties are probably better. But I just think overall the Niners defense front to back is better. And I think when the Niners are going well offensively, their offense is more consistent. What we've seen with the Eagles, though, like, we talk about that 0-38 stat when the Niners are down, 8 or more points going into a fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the Niners really come back from any sort of deficit. And we saw the Eagles do that today. Twice, right? Like, the Eagles were down 24-14 in the third quarter.
They got down 10 twice, right?
Oh,
they didn't tie it. Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. No, they were down 24-14 in the third quarter, came back, obviously went to overtime, and then the Bills got on the board first, and the Eagles scored the touchdown to win the game. But, like, for the most part this year, and this isn't necessarily me saying that, like, this is like a bad thing, but the Niners have kind of won all their games the same way, right? Like, they've just kind of like scored first and then just kind of like rolled these teams, right? Like, it happened in Pittsburgh. It more or less happened against the Rams, although that game was a little bit closer. It happened against the Giants. It happened against the Cardinals. They blew out the Cowboys, right? They blew out Jacksonville. They more or less blew out Tampa Bay, just handled business, and they blew out Seattle. So they haven't really played like the back and forth game and came out on top, right? Like the games that were closer, those came during the losing streak,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the Minnesota game and the Cleveland game. And so that's not to say that I think the 49ers can't win a game like that, but the Eagles have been forced to win games in a wider variety of ways. And I do think that that gives them a little bit of an advantage because when the 49ers have been behind in the fourth quarter this year, those have been the games they've lost. And that's when those are the times when Brock Purdy's thrown those bad interceptions. And it just is what it is. And so, like, if you want to look at statistics and numbers and, point differential and all that, yeah, 49ers have a 140 point differential and the Eagles is 64. But the record is what it is. And I know we're in like this weird world of analytics and social media and, people looking at numbers in a way that they haven't before. But to me, like I appreciate analytics and I understand them for what they
Mm-hmm.
are, but they are not the end all be all when it comes to the judgment of the team. I'm far closer to the Bill Parcells, you are what your record says you are
Yes.
line of thinking. And I understand that that's like antiquated and there are probably some analytics people who are like, that's really dumb. And like, I get why you think that way.
Yeah.
But the thing is, an NFL season is 17 games, which is generally a small sample size, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
while analytics have value, you're basing everything off an inherently small sample size. And there's so many variables in football,
Mm-hmm.
injuries, schedule, rest, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that all these numbers inherently are really noisy. So for me, like, yeah, there's value in analytics, but like we're looking at small sample sizes. To me, like I can't discount what the Eagles are doing and say, wow, the 49ers are so much better because the 49ers have a better point differential. Like the 49ers
Right.
have just sort of like rolled on all these teams and the Eagles have had to win their games in a much different way,
Mm-hmm.
which, I don't know if being battle tested, quote unquote, necessarily matters all that much. But the fact that they've been in all these games and they've had to come back and they do have confidence when they are behind going into the fourth quarter, whereas the 49ers are 0-38 under Kyle Shanahan when entering a fourth quarter down 8 or more points. Like, I'm sorry, like that's I can't ignore that and just be like, oh yeah, Niners point differential is more than twice the Eagles, so the Niners are clearly the better team. I just
Mm-hmm.
can't look at it like that. Like the Eagles are winning
No.
games at a
No.
higher rate than the 49ers have this year. Like point blank, like that's it for me.
Here's where I'm at with and again, I'm totally with you on the analytics stuff. But to me, that I think where it it falls short is it just comes down to the players, and analytics are great for being predictive and for if you want to use here's a great example. If you want to use out underlying numbers or peripheral numbers or tape or whatever to say that Justin Herbert is better than a 29-31 quarterback, then okay. Like that's fine. If you want to make the argument that Justin Herbert with the 49ers would be a top 3 NFL quarterback, like okay, that I'll listen to that. But if you want to say that well the Chargers are just as good as the Eagles because of X, Y, and Z, like no they're not. Like they're just like they're not. The Eagles went there was an air this is how I judge it. And again, this is dumb because as a person who loves numbers and analytics and stuff, this flies in the face of that, but it is what it is. It's sports. During that game today, there wasn't really a point that I ever felt like Philly was going to lose. It's like the Bills go down, they get their touchdown, and it was like, well, the Eagles are going to go score here. I didn't think they were going to kick a 61-yard field goal. I thought they were going to go either get a touchdown or a field goal to send it to overtime. And then in OT, it's like, I don't think they're going to lose. Even as the Bills get the ball, even as the Bills are driving, it's like, they'll get the stop. And then they do. And then they go down and they get a touchdown. Because that's just kind of how they operate. They're very machine-like. And have they been as dominant at their peak as the 49ers this year? No, but they've also not been as low as the 49ers have gotten. They're just really consistently good. And it's extra impressive to me that they're doing this coming off a Super Bowl loss.
Yeah.
Like that's hard to do, man. It's
Their
really, really hard.
revenge tour is going better than the Niners
Dude, hey, do you know
2020
why?
revenge tour
It's
did.
probably because they didn't go on the internet saying hashtag revenge tour.
Um, so we should point out though that the Eagles have gotten a little bit lucky at times, including today. Buffalo misses 2 field goals in a game that they lost by 3 points. That went to
Yeah.
overtime.
Yeah.
So I mean, luck's part of it, but like it's hard for me to be like, you know, I don't factor luck into saying like, I don't know. I just think I think it's fair to say like you can I'm gonna ride the fence on this completely. I think it's fair
Love
to
it.
say, yeah, you look at the rosters, you look at the coach in particular, and you say, yeah, the Niners probably like 1 to 53 have a better
Mm-hmm.
roster.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles are the number 1 seed, and they've won the games, and they deserve that respect.
That's it.
And like a point differential thing is not going to change my
Well,
opinion of that.
and that's right. I'm right there with you because I don't know if there's a player or a I guess I should say a team in this conversation. I don't know if there's a team that I trust more to score points, whatever points they need, with 90 seconds left and no timeouts, or a team to get a stop when they're up 5 with 90 seconds left. And I think that says a lot. Now, again, like you said, is it crazy that the Niners are favored? Like, no. And if we
No.
find out that the Niners, hey, are also that team, then I would not be shocked. The Niners are good as hell, bro. But Philly's been really good this year, and they showed it in Kansas City, and they showed it against Buffalo. And whether it's luck or whatever it is, they're 10-1. And the Niners' path to the 1 seed is honestly really, really tough. So do you want to map that out real quick?
So if they win on Sunday, they'll be a game back,
But they'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker.
but they'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker. I haven't even looked at Detroit, but
So here's in week 12, it's hard to be like, here's all the tiebreak scenarios because the head-to-head tiebreak scenarios are different than the 3-way tiebreak scenarios. So the easiest way to do this is let's say Detroit loses 1 of their final games. The Niners, if they win Sunday, would need to run the table and hope that Philly loses another game. Like that's, and if they lose, they're 3 back and they don't have the head-to-head tiebreaker, it's over.
Yeah. So the way the Lions have looked the last couple weeks, I do think they might be a different team than they were when they were like 5-1, right?
Yeah, that was ugly on Thanksgiving, man. Oof.
That was ugly on Thanksgiving and really ugly the week before against the Bears in a game that they somehow pulled out. But so Detroit, just real quick before we get to the Niners and Eagles, 4 of the last 6 games remaining on the Lions schedule are on the road. At New Orleans, at Chicago. They're home to Denver, which is suddenly a much better team than they were early on in the year. At Minnesota, at Dallas, and then home to Minnesota. So the only point I'll make here is that I'm feeling different about Detroit now than I was, say, a month ago. Given the way they've played and given the fact that 4 of their next 6 are on the road. And I could see them slipping up once or twice is really all I'm saying.
Yeah. Who do they have left?
At New Orleans, at Chicago, Denver at home, at Minnesota, at Dallas, and Minnesota at home.
Oh yeah, they're gonna lose one of those at least.
At least, and the Niners are the Niners are currently in the 2 seed,
right?
And the tiebreaker against Detroit is the
intra-conference
strength of wins or conference records. The Niners are 6-1 in conference. Detroit's 5-2.
Right. So honestly, it well, I mean, this doesn't really ultimately matter probably, but the Niners might wind up if they lose 4 games this year. There's a good chance that 3 of their 4 losses are to AFC teams. That's just a weird.
You thinking
Baltimore. Like if they lose to Baltimore.
Yeah.
But
Baltimore's their only
bridge we
remaining
can't-
AFC opponent.
that's a bridge we can't cross until we get to it.
1 week at a time, Kyle.
Yeah, dude. I don't know what I'm thinking. Like trying to just lose focus on the Eagles. Is this a trap game?
Shout out to everybody who's upset thinking about us looking ahead and not having the 1 week at a time attitude. Because we play for the team and we're preparing for the Eagles on Sunday and we can only talk about the Eagles.
That's a real thing that happens on the internet, by the way.
No, it's hilarious. It's like, guys, I don't play for the team. I can
let's just
if I have the 1 week
on this week.
Right. I can have the 1 week at a time mindset. That doesn't mean the players in the locker room have it.
Right.
Why you mad at me? Talk to them.
I promise that my article about the 7 toughest games remaining on the Niners schedule is not going to affect the locker room.
Right.
They're like, dang, did you guys read this? Hang on. Pause that Seahawks tape.
Brock Purdy dialing up NinersWire.com.
Fired up.
Like, hey, did you guys see this? Hey, Christian. You see this? You see this article about our schedule?
Like, dang, hey, let's look ahead. What,
hey, George?
Brock,
I know you got Eagles. I know you got Eagles tape, but come over here and read this.
You see what they said about the Ravens? It's gonna be a tough game. Let's focus on that one. Hey, guys, you lost 42-6 here in Philly. What happened out there? Oh God, we're just. We're real focused on Lamar Jackson this week.
Thinking too much about that next Seahawks game. Anyway,
man. Hey, we would be remiss to not mention an incredible slate of college football this weekend. Huge victory for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I didn't think they had a shot there at the end of the Iron Bowl with the whole illegal forward pass and the 4th and 31. So big ups to Nick Saban for pulling out the win over Auburn. And then big ups to Florida State for that comeback against Florida. Just big rivalry games that wanted to shout out. I'd say those are the biggest ones of the weekend. So
I'm perfectly okay with, and Kyle's bit here is ignoring the Ohio State-Michigan game. I'm perfectly okay with acknowledging Michigan was better on Saturday, and they played really well. I thought Ohio State played like an 8 out of 10 game. Michigan was closer to a 9.5. I think JJ McCarthy is really good. And my point of frustration with Ohio State is the fact that McCarthy wanted to go to Ohio State and is instead making plays all over the field as a Michigan quarterback, while Ohio State more or less has a game manager who can maybe run into a good throw.
Dude, he was not built for that game.
Well, I mean, the first half interception that led to the touchdown obviously was the biggest play of the game.
Oof.
Yikes.
Shout out to Josh and Tracy.
But shout out to Josh and Tracy. My big issue is more about the cheating scandal. And I'm gonna rant for like 20 seconds here.
Yes.
Michigan against the world and America's team and all this bullshit. You turned around and accepted the penalty of Jim Harbaugh's 3-game suspension, which is more or less an admission of guilt. So save all of us from hearing your bullshit about it being so unfair the way you're being treated. When you turn around and see the evidence against you and just decide, okay, yeah, this penalty's fine. Like, just shut up. Like, nobody, you're not, we're dealing with so much adversity and it's not fair to our kids. You guys did this to yourselves. You should have thought about the kids and the penalties that might come when you were cheating. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Like, if they would have kept fighting the suspension and all that stuff, like, fine, go ahead. Like, whatever. Right. I don't care. Right. But if you're going to accept the penalty while you're doing this us against the world thing, shut up.
It's really dumb.
Shut up. And Michigan was a better team. They deserve to win. Whatever. Fine. And yeah, right. I'm an Ohio State alum, and obviously I'm a little bit salty. But their whole handling of this thing is so fraudulent and so ridiculous. And I just want all the Michigan people to do, like, who's going to be the first Michigan person to say, man, this sucks that we did this. I'm really disappointed that we did this. This doesn't reflect our program. Like, instead of like, oh, this is a farce investigation. Everyone's just out to get us because we're so good. It's like, you guys accepted the 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh. So just shut up. Just shut up at this point. I'm done.
I'm extra sensitive to it after the whole Astros thing. And just the fact that none of the Astros players ever like spoke up about it. And the response from the main guys from that team was like, I don't know what everybody's so upset about. Like, why are we being asked? I don't know why everyone's booing us. Like, if you don't, go to hell, dude.
America's team. And here's my guess at what's going to happen.
Isn't Harbaugh still coaching? He just can't be at the game.
His suspension's over. He's going to coach the Big Ten championship game. Here's what my guess is going to happen. There's still an NCAA investigation ongoing. Mm-hmm. Jim Harbaugh, who everyone at Michigan loves, who really tried to get the Minnesota Vikings job last year and endless NFL jobs before that, who's a self-proclaimed Michigan guy till I die or whatever.
Michigan man.
He's going to leave the program for a crappy NFL job before he can get suspended or punished even further for this cheating thing. That's my guess at what happens. And then I would love to hear everyone's opinion at Michigan of Jim Harbaugh. Michigan guy till he dies and whatever. Fed up.
Is that it for today?
Yeah, Michigan was a better team. It was frustrating.
They definitely were.
They were the better team. It was frustrating that Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't getting more targets. It's frustrating that Ohio State, as like its super top tier program, has more or less a game manager quarterback.
That's right.
I'm not like a fire Ryan Day guy, but it's like, hey Ryan, like, let's figure out the quarterback position. And I know you had a nice run with Justin Fields and CJ Stroud and all that, but like
at some point, look,
let's improve the situation.
It felt like Ryan Day approached that game like, hey, good old fashioned fisticuffs, put up your dukes. And Michigan brought like a cache of weapons, and Ryan Day just never decided to try and fight differently. It was a strange juxtaposition of styles where you have this super aggressive Michigan team and then Ohio State not doing anything creative or different and just riding their grinded out game managed quarterback.
I
guess they don't have a ton of choice, but
I did not feel good about the game in the first quarter, even before McCord threw the interception. When his first two passes, I think they were the first two passes, were like wildly off target.
Yeah.
And then the receivers just looked pissed, like they hated their quarterback.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, so this is what it is. So these guys are basically treating Kyle McCord like Justin Jefferson treated Kirk Cousins a couple years ago when he like sulked after every pass was like wildly off target. Okay, great.
One of my favorite plays of all time was that playoff game. And it's Justin Jefferson, and he's hanging out in the end zone. And where I was in Narnia in the press box, you could see the trajectory of the throw going downward. And you saw Justin Jefferson's shoulder slump before the ball even hit the dirt.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable cinema.
That's what it felt like. And at that point, I was like, yeah, Ohio State's not going into the big house and winning today.
What? I don't want to.
But they played. In the third and fourth quarter, I thought they had a chance. But again, like, can maybe get like the best receiver we've seen in the last 10 years of ball.
Dude, how does he not get 20 freaking targets a game?
I don't know.
What's happening?
I don't know. Anyway, this is not an Ohio State podcast, but I'm glad I was able to get my feelings off on the sign stealing investigation. Just somebody, if you're associated with Michigan, be the first person to be the bigger person. Be like, man, I wish we didn't cheat. I wish we didn't resort to this shit. We're better than this. We're the winningest program in college football history. We don't need to steal signs and do all this bullshit. Instead, everyone's like playing the victim card and being like, oh, all this adversity. You brought the adversity on yourself. Don't cry during a post-game interview and talk about all the adversity you went through. Shut up. God.
Like, free Jim Harbaugh. Like, Jim Harbaugh put himself there.
Guy got suspended twice. That doesn't happen to normal coaches. Normal coaches don't get suspended twice in the same season. I'm sorry.
Joke. What a joke. All right. I have nothing else to say.
Me neither.
We'll be
Let's get
diving
out of here.
into Niners Eagles all week. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles podcast. Or you can just search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube. We're right there at the top. Subscribe. Hit that little notification bell. You'll get a notification every time we go live, which we do after games. We've got a couple of midweek pods and just bringing you content. Hope you enjoy
Yeah, and
it.
our shows stream also on X, formerly Twitter. The handle is @CandleCron, no stick, no ickles. Not a ton of followers over there yet, but we're steadily
it's a slow
climbing.
build. It's a slow build.
Slow build, but yeah, we're streaming on if it's easier for you to watch on X.
Perils of creating an account on a dying platform.
Like 2 years after the fact.
God, it's the dumbest shit. X.
Elon might be watching right now. I hope.
Do you know who would call it X? 11-year-old me being like, "What am I going to name this fake business that I'm going to run? I'm going to call it X. Here's the logo. It's half a block X, half a regular X. Yeah. What happens at X? I don't know. But it's called X."
Anyway,
what a dipshit.
I feel like anytime I see, like a X post or a tweet that gets sent to the group chat and Siri reads it to me and it's like so and so says on X, I'm like, are they at the party?
I'm just rolling and on X.
Adam Schefter,
I'm also on X.
Adam Schefter just sharing info with gigantic pupils.
It's just like...
and icy hot, just like we got some inactive news. Anyway, let's get out of here.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.